So ages ago, Mr. Kim, I was complaining to you about how some people asked me to read their essays.
Yeah.
And then I walked up to you and I said, how can you do this every single year? Because people always make the exact same mistakes.
Yeah.
And then we talked to some 7th graders about it, and then you thought, well, maybe we should record it at some point.
Well, hi, here we are. Hello and welcome. Let me introduce. Who are you?
I'm Mohammed Beheshti. I used to go to the school. Technically, I haven't really graduated yet, but...
Yeah. Well, in any case, I want to thank you very much. We're going to chat a little bit about the TOK essay, right? Yeah. Why? What makes you so special about... What makes you an expert concerning TOK essays?
I don't know. I feel like at some point I realized that TOK essays are essentially just really boring essays, which are really plain and really to the point. And I guess that's it. I think that's...
Yeah, there's another thing. I mean, you've been reading a few TOK essays from some of your classmates.
That's true. Yeah, people. Once I realized that, people walked up to me with their essays and they were like, "Can you read through this?"
Yeah, and I think there are a couple of interesting points that you actually made concerning this, and I thought we were just going to share this with you. I think it's always better if a student or former student actually explains it to the other students than if a teacher does that, because usually teachers, you don't always want to believe a teacher, right?
True.
Yeah, okay, well, in any case, all of you have to write a TOK essay, a theory of knowledge essay. How long is it? How long?
1,500 words.
Maximum 1,600.
Yep.
People always ask, okay, what's the minimum word count?
It should make sense is the answer you always get. Yeah. It's great. It's very TOK. It's vague and it doesn't give you any answers.
If you write too few words, you're going to lose points all over the place. So I think you should try to meet the 1,600 words really. Okay.
I think you do need like a certain number of areas of knowledge though.
Yeah. And if you don't have that, then essentially you're going to lose points all over the place. So my advice is try to write as much as you can, up to 1,600 words, but do not try to fill it with
empty words.
With empty words. Okay. Yeah. So what were some of the issues that you actually found out when you've read some of the essays?
I mean, it's stuff that you've been saying for years.
Yep.
With be more specific. What happened at one point is a student walked up to me with an essay that you'd corrected.
Yeah.
And what I did was, at every point where you wrote explain, I did another point and told them what you mean by that, like what they should explain. I think it's stuff like when you say something like, "Ooh, it's very difficult to judge that because of the subjectivity in this matter or in this topic," and then you would have this little comment next to it by Mr. Kim that says explain. And what that's supposed to mean is like right after you use something like, oh, these opinions are so subjective, you should explain why they're so subjective.
In other words, support your claims.
Yes,
okay.
Always. And immediately afterwards. That's another thing. People say, well, it's in this paragraph. Yes, but it's not.
Where?
It should be right after you state something. You should already be supporting it.
Yeah, otherwise, the TOK essay is too complex. Otherwise, you don't see the connection anymore. And another thing that you just mentioned before we actually started recording here is sometimes people do give examples.
Yes, but they have nothing to do with what they're saying. So I read this one essay which was talking about, I think it was actually talking about subjectivity, and all of a sudden it gave the example of what is the idea of beauty, and this example by Immanuel Kant and his roses, which, okay, it's tied to the topic, but it was such a stretch. It came out of nowhere, and it seemed like the person was just trying to kind of cram that in there somehow. And sometimes that's one possibility. They desperately try to come up with an example but can't, and therefore it's kind of really trying to stretch it. Or the second problem sometimes is that students, they do give an example, but the connection is in the head of the student, but not on the essay. So that means do not force the reader to make the connection, but actually write it in there. Write it how it's connected. It's the same with the exams. How people always say state the obvious. It's the same in the TOK essay. You should, even if it's the most obvious thing, like even if you have to say it's subjective because people have different opinions, say because they have different opinions. Because then when Mr. Kim asks, well, why is it subjective, and you say, well, because they have different opinions, why have you not written it? That's the thing. You should be writing. It will sound really boring and it will sound really strange, and nobody writes essays anywhere ever like TOK essays, because people just don't write essays like that, but that's what the IB wants. And another thing is a question sometimes comes quite frequently
how in the world am I supposed to write 1,600 words on a topic like this? I mean, what suggestions do you have? It's not a small essay and a highly abstract topic.
Well,
and it's supposed to make sense, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all it is it's the same with the presentation. You get a question, so you have some kind of knowledge issue, and then all you're doing is that's what all the essay is just pro and con arguments in different areas areas of knowledge.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
So my suggestion would be in this case is, as you said, is maybe to split up the large 1,600 word essay into several paragraphs, which each paragraph treating a separate aspect of the topic. So it's a kind of a divide and conquer procedure, I would say. You have a huge task in front of you, and you're going to simply split it up into manageable tasks.
And it has to be even, because a lot of people think you have to give your main argument and then simply disprove it because, or I mean, give a counter argument because that's how the essay works. Your counter argument should be just as long as your actual argument.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing. Sometimes when I say TOK is about critical thinking, I think that refers to that. Is you do not only critique or criticize a knowledge claim, but you also try to find examples where it is valid. So you try to have a balanced essay. But one of the funny things, not funny, it's not really funny, but sometimes students try to desperately include a counter argument, and it turns out to be a contradiction, kind of, you know. They build up a very good argument, and they really explain it very well using examples, and then all of a sudden they write a paragraph and say, well, actually it's not really true what I just said, you know.
Yeah, your counter argument doesn't mean that you have to disprove the argument you just made. You just have to find another example where in that area of knowledge what you claimed may not necessarily be true.
Exactly.
So it should be something else. You shouldn't
exceptions like certain exceptions maybe, or maybe where it might be seen differently. Okay, but it doesn't mean that it's simply what you just said is wrong. You know, and that's something that I sometimes consider quite confusing, where students actually write something, they build up an argument, they provide examples, and they say it's really cool, it's really great, I get your point, it's well written, and then all of a sudden they destroy their own argument by saying, well, actually it's not really true what I just said. You know, or but that's not a counter argument really. It's more under what circumstances would this argument that you just made not be as valid maybe, or can you find certain exceptions or different ways of actually looking at the whole argument? Okay.
Yes, I think another thing that students struggle with is the fact that they think, how can I really express these arguments in the TOK essay? The good thing about the TOK essay is that it can be as simple as you want it to be. Like language-wise, it doesn't have to be a very high level of language. You can write the sentences exactly how you're thinking it. Almost. Yeah,
some students always ask, well, can I say I? Can I use the pronoun I? And I say, okay, please use it. Of course, it's a personal essay.
If it makes sense.
Yeah, if it makes sense. Other students say, well, can I say my own opinion? That's another thing. What shall I say? The whole essay is your own opinion. You're trying to prove your argument. These things really do not play a major role. I think what is really important is that the essay does have some kind of a red line, or kind of a red string, as we say, through the whole thing. That kind of reads smoothly and well, and that it's kind of easy to follow.
And talking about essay structure, what I realized at some point is that the essay essentially consists of smaller essays inside it. So you have the structure of, at the beginning, you give your knowledge issue and you you state your question, and then you immediately give your answer. Whenever you ask a question, immediately give an answer. Don't wait until later.
Exactly. I've seen some essays where the student simply summarized a whole bunch of knowledge issues, which is interesting, sure. But what is your answer to that? Okay. How are you going to answer this knowledge issue? I mean, so there were a lot of TOK aspects that were addressed in the essay, but really not really completed in thinking. You know, the question was thrown at the reader.
Also, your answer is going to be, it depends anyways. Your answer is going to be, well, in this case it can be true, and in that case it's not true. But you should still write that, even though it feels like you're not really giving an answer, because you're just saying that it's very
I know, but maybe that is actually the answer. Answers can be balanced.
Should be balanced, I guess.
So that is a clear answer. If you say under these conditions, A, under those conditions more B. Yeah. So a little bit, I mean, the example that I've always been giving is do you like a chocolate ice or cake? Yeah.
You can like both.
You can like both. In summer, I like a chocolate ice more. In wintertime, I like cake more. You know, I'm not contradicting myself. Yeah, It depends. Yeah? When I'm hungry, I might like chocolate ice or cake more. Yeah. When I'm hot, I might like ice cream more. Yeah. So it's not a contradiction really. It's more under which circumstances. Yeah. Do you prefer what? Yeah. So that is. So that is based. What problems or what challenges did you personally feel when writing the TOK?
Coming up with examples.
It's
the same with the presentation. The bane of your existence while writing these things is always what are my examples.
So how did you actually go about that? Did you research them, or it might not always be a good idea either?
It's you keep your eyes open for it maybe, because sometimes you find things which can be really good knowledge issues, for example, so you can use those. It's also difficult to come up with those for the presentation, especially. For the essays, you already have your knowledge question given, so all it is you sit down and you think of examples, and it's really a trial and error thing. That's what it was for me. I would think of an example, then I would think, does this example make sense? Most of the time it didn't, so you move on to the next thing.
Or you try to find a connection and try to explain the connection, or did you really have problems sometimes really finding good examples?
Really finding good examples, that's a big problem. Because making the connection is, I think that's more difficult sometimes, because you're thinking to yourself, well, this sounds like it's contradicting itself, but earlier we said you shouldn't use examples that have nothing to do with the topic. So sometimes when you have an example and it's not completely connected, you feel like it's the wrong example.
Okay.
So it's very difficult to draw the line between I have an example that is not related at all, and I have something that's close enough so that I could link it to my knowledge issue or my knowledge question. So I think that the difficult part about TOK is how vague it is. There's no clear boundaries for anything.
Yeah, but I think the point of writing the essay is actually to make it less vague and make it more clear for the reader, so that the reader actually understands the point that you're trying to make. Yeah. But I think it is different compared to maybe other essays which is simply a summary of facts maybe, or simply a summary of events. Well, in TOK it's more the concept is rather communicating a relatively abstract idea, and in a very balanced way where it's not just black and white, and I think that can be sometimes a challenge as well.
Definitely. But I mean, structure-wise, the TOK essay teaches you the very basic form of an essay. Like it is when the IB says it's an essay, they really mean it. Like it is the most minimalistic, most simple form of writing an essay, because all you're doing is you're giving your arguments, and every argument is structured the exact same way. It's always you give your topic sentence. So in the area of knowledge of this statement is blah 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 blah. Then you maybe explain it a little bit further, you give your example, and at the end of your paragraph, you again state, therefore, in the area of knowledge of this, this is true or this is not true.
I think that's actually a good point. The TOK essay is actually learning how to write TOK essay is a good essay writing skill in general. You got to have a clear introduction with a thesis statement. Yeah? You got to have your body paragraphs. I always say at least 4 body paragraphs.
2 areas of knowledge.
2 areas of knowledge. 1 paragraph pro, the other one con.
And again pro and con. And then, if you can somehow include 2 ways of knowing.
Yep. Yes. Should be as broad as possible, and then finally as a last one, a conclusion as a mini essay. I would actually rather read a shorter, well polished TOK essay compared to one that has been artificially blown up, and which is difficult to follow and which kind of is a little confusing to read. It's at least my
I think the only reason the TOK essays are not, in my opinion, not very interesting to read in general is because they're too minimalistic. Like you're so limited by the word count. If you could do this, if you could apply this structure to an essay where you could maybe talk about more things, you weren't limited to ways of knowing and areas of knowledge, then it'd be a really good essay.
I'll be very honest with you. I mean, because you're referring to this very rigid structure. Well, the IB does not prescribe a very rigid structure, as a matter of fact.
It doesn't?
No, it doesn't. Oh. I was actually the one that told the students write 6 paragraphs, an intro, a conclusion,
Good to know.
And then 4 body paragraphs, pro con. And the reason why I said that is because Otherwise, the majority of students would simply start writing in a kind of a train of thought. They simply would just sit down and type whatever comes into their mind.
Ah, okay.
Okay, and
So you did this?
Yeah, that was my
okay.
suggestion. Okay, because I would say very good students are still able to provide a structured essay, but the vast majority of students who are not as practiced in writing essays, they would simply sit down and they would write it like, I don't know, they would start typing, so many years ago, before I taught the student this type of structure, I had essays who had 0 paragraphs. It was one block of text from the beginning to the end. And it was actually a development how the student actually, then ultimately at the end, contradicted what he or she said at the beginning, because while writing the essay, the student changed his or her mind. Mm-hmm. So this was a very confusing to read essay, and this is when I decided, and they forgot about the areas of knowledge because or they only wrote about the death penalty, ethics of the death penalty from the beginning.
Death penalty, Nazi regime.
Yeah, death penalty, Nazi regime, same-sex marriage, and abortion.
Yeah.
It's all, and I tell the students, don't even touch these topics. They've been overused. They're emotionalized. It's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of distract really from the point you're making because people get emotional about or maybe U.S. politics nowadays. You probably would include that as well.
Yes. Yeah.
I probably would not write that. So that's why, for this reason, I force the students to actually adhere to the structure so that there is at least some kind of a balanced and organized argument there. Otherwise, there's really the danger that people just start typing it out. They have their 1,600 words. They're so happy that they finally got their essay finished. But in reality,
they're just going all over the place.
They're going all over the place, and it's impossible to follow what they were actually saying. You know? So that's
I guess it does limit you, but it makes sense to use that structure because otherwise, like just trying to blindly write an essay, it'll end up being almost like a mental monologue.
That's what I meant. Yeah, it was a mental monologue, like a train of thought type of what came into the student's mind. The student just wrote down,
which is not necessarily bad, but that's not what they want.
That's not an essay really. Yeah. It might be an interesting, I don't know, a self-reflective type of, I don't know, monologue that you might want to perform on a stage on finding yourself maybe, but it's not an essay, it's so that was a little bit the thing. Yeah. Anything else? Well, I don't know how we've been now talking for quite some time now.
Yeah. Anything else? Not really. What I was going to talk about?
Well, I would say we just call it quits for right now. Okay.
Yeah.
I think one of the things which is important is that you do get started with the essay, that you tackle this in a proactive way. But I recommend that you do not start typing out the essay too early. It's really important that you start planning it first. And that you collect your ideas, that you collect your arguments, your counter-arguments, and that you provide concrete examples that support your claims. I think that's the bottom line. Yeah.
Use the IBU website.
Yeah, there are many sources available. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye bye.
You should host a talk show.
I should. You think so?
Yeah.
But
this was literally a talk show.
You think so?
Yeah. You called me here. You were like, let's talk about the TOK essay, and then I sat down, and then we talked about the TOK essay. And it's like you've also set it up like a talk show. Like you're moderating. Then every now and then you ask questions.
It was highly improvised. Actually, we didn't prep this at all.
Yeah.
So, if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel. Okay. Bye. All the best. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
No problem.